My name is Evelyn Hart. I'm 31, and last spring I placed $10 million in my mother's safe. By the next morning she was gone. So was my sister, and so was every last dollar. But that's not the part I need to explain. You see, people assume betrayal looks like a knife. Sharp, obvious, loud. But sometimes it's a whisper, a teacup left on the counter, a safe door left open just wide enough for sunlight to catch nothing inside. That morning, I woke in the old twin bed from my childhood. The frame still creaked the same way. My mother Lillian hadn't changed the wallpaper in 20 years. Faded roses, the kind that made everything look like it was trying to be soft. Lillian Hart was a waitress most of her life. Short-tempered on the outside, but always bringing home extra rolls in her purse after long shifts. She raised 2 daughters, alone me and my sister Amber. I was the quiet one, the overachiever. Amber was the one people said had spirit. That was just their polite way of saying she broke a lot of things. That morning, I expected the smell of coffee. Bacon, maybe. She still used the same drip machine from the 90s, the one with the crack down the side. But the house was silent. Too silent. I called for her. Then for Amber. Nothing. I padded down the hallway. Her bedroom door was open. Bed made. No purse on the hook, no coffee on, no car in the driveway. I knew something was wrong before I opened the office door. The bookcase was already slid slightly off its track. Behind it was the wall safe I had installed 3 years ago. Fireproof, hidden, reinforced, empty. Not just empty clean. Like someone had taken not just the money, but the memory of it. Like it had never been there at all. On the kitchen counter, propped against the coffee maker, sat a single note in my mother's handwriting. Thanks for your money. Now we can finally live our dream life. Mom and Amber. If you're waiting for the part where I screamed or cried, that comes later. What I did first was laugh. And if that doesn't make sense, just keep listening. I've been told more than once that I got out. That's what people say when you come from a place that tries to hold you still, poverty, silence, expectations, and you somehow slip free. But the truth is, I never left that house. Not really. It was a 2-bedroom rental in a neighborhood that always felt one job loss away from collapse. We had a mold problem in the bathroom that Mom insisted was just mildew. The water heater rattled like it was trying to leave us. The carpet always smelled like someone else's dog. Lillian Hart, my mother, worked at the same diner for 26 years. She wore white orthopedic shoes and came home with grease in her hair and change in her apron. She never complained except when she did it to protect us. She used to say, "You girls are going to do better than me. You have to." We lived paycheck to paycheck, but somehow there was always enough for one birthday gift each, a homemade cake with canned frosting and second-hand Christmas lights that blinked out by New Year's. It wasn't joy, but it was love. Or maybe it was duty, and I just called it love because that's what I needed it to be. I was the planner, the saver, the girl who did her own homework, and her sisters too. Amber, 5 years younger, was the wild one. Loud, magnetic, impulsive. She got into things she couldn't finish, and I'd step in to fix them. Teachers, friend drama, one unfortunate fender bender. She'd cry. I'd cover the cost. Mom always said she's just figuring herself out. Not everyone's built like you, Evelyn. At the time, I thought that was kindness. Now I wonder if it was permission. When I got into MIT on a full ride, I remember Mom cried, but not the joyful kind of cry. It was the kind where her jaw stayed tight and her arms didn't reach for me. "Guess one of my girls made it," she said. That was all. Even then, I didn't know how to read the distance in her eyes. She came to graduation. She clapped. She smiled for pictures. But she never said, "I'm proud of you," unless someone else was listening. Amber didn't finish community college. She worked a dozen jobs over the years, retail waitressing, pet sitting, but none of them stuck. There was always something: a bad boss, a breakup, a panic attack. She moved in with Mom more times than I could count. I helped when I could. Paid off a medical bill here, fixed a car there. Never big gestures, just enough so they didn't fall apart. I told myself that's what family does. But here's something I've learned the hard way. The more you rescue people, the more they forget you have limits. And if you rescue them long enough, they stop saying thank you. They just start waiting for the next time. Still, I kept giving, because I thought that meant I was good. Because I believed it kept us close. Because deep down, I was afraid that if I stopped, they'd leave. And maybe they would have. But not in the way they did. I built my company alone. No co-founder, no venture capital, no safety net. Just me, a used laptop, and a rented room over a bakery that smelled like sugar and burned hope. I named it CipherSite, an encryption startup built for banks and digital identity protection. The first year nearly broke me. The second gave me traction. By the third, I had contracts I couldn't believe I signed, and by the fourth, I had an offer to sell. $20 million. I remember standing in the boardroom, papers in front of me, thinking I want to call my mother. And I did. She answered on the second ring. "Evelyn, Mom, I said we did it. I meant me, but I said we." She cried. Or maybe she pretended to. I couldn't see her face. Amber squealed in the background. "Does this mean I can finally open that boutique I told you about?" That was the first time I felt the shift. They weren't happy for me. They were happy about what I could now do for them, but I still wanted to share it. I sent my mother a letter, not just money. A letter that said, "You don't have to work again. The house is yours. The debt's gone." I even added, "If Amber needs help, she can talk to me directly." She never replied to the letter, just texted "appreciate it." At least one of my girls made it. I brushed it off. That's what we do right. We tell ourselves family just has a hard time expressing gratitude, but the resentment wasn't subtle anymore. Whenever I'd mention a win, an interview, a keynote, even the house I wanted to buy my mother would sigh and say, "Must be nice." Amber would joke I should have paid more attention in school. Then maybe I'd have a mansion too. None of it was cruel. But it chipped at me, like standing in a room where everyone's smiling but no one's looking you in the eye. Then came the house. I had found it modern steel and glass perched above the bay like something out of a dream. $28 million. I planned to offer $10 million in cash. The seller was looking for fast, clean certainty. I didn't want delays. I didn't want to lose it. And I didn't want the money sitting in a bank vault where no one could access it before closing. That's when I thought of the safe. 3 years earlier, I had paid to install a secure vault in Mom's house hidden behind a bookshelf. It was meant for her collection of porcelain figurines. At the time, I thought it was quirky. Now I wonder if she already knew what it could be used for. When I told Caleb, my fiancé, about my plan to place the money there overnight, he stared at me for a long time. "You trust them that much?" he asked. I didn't answer, because saying yes would have been a lie, and saying no would have meant admitting something I wasn't ready to face. Sometimes we don't ignore the warning signs. We just relabel them as love. The day I withdrew the money, it rained. Not a storm, just that slow, steady kind that makes everything feel heavier than it should. I remember gripping the steering wheel tighter as I left the bank, not from fear, but from the weight of what I was carrying, not the cash. The decision. Caleb had begged me not to do it. "This is insane," he said the night before, pushing his half-finished dinner aside. "You're walking out of a bank with $10 million in cash like you're in a movie. What if something goes wrong?" I smiled, trying to settle his nerves. "I hired a private security team," I told him. 2 of Kyle's best guys, ex-military. They'll follow me from the bank to Mom's. The money stays there overnight. That's it. I'll pick it up tomorrow morning before closing. He shook his head. "Why your mom's house? Why not a safety deposit box? A vault? Something professional?" I didn't tell him the real reason, that I needed to prove something to myself. That trusting my mother Lillian was like making peace with every version of my childhood that still whispered she tried her best. Instead, I said, "Her safe is solid. I had it installed myself. She barely uses it." He didn't look convinced. That afternoon, the 2 guards, Trevor and Marcus, met me at the bank. They didn't ask questions. They handled the duffel bags like they'd done this 100 times. Maybe they had. We arrived at my mother's house just before 6. Amber answered the door, all wide-eyed and breathless. "Whoa," she said, eyeing the men behind me. "What is this? Some kind of heist?" Lillian came out from the kitchen, drying her hands on a floral dish towel. "Evelyn, this feels like overkill." I smiled tightly. "It's $10 million, Mom." She led us to the office. The bookshelf slid back. The safe opened. Trevor and Marcus loaded the 3 duffel bags inside, locked it, tested the code. Done. Before they left, Trevor turned to me. "We'll be back at 9 a.m. Sharp. After the door closed behind them, the house felt different. Not tense, Not hostile. Just oddly alert. Like everyone was listening a little too closely, even while doing normal things. Mom offered to cook. Amber lit candles again. She said it helped her relax the energy. Dinner was quiet until Amber asked, "Is all that really cash? Like physical bills, mostly 500s?" I said, taking a sip of wine. "It's not how most deals happen, but in this case it makes a difference." "Isn't that risky?" she said. "What if something happened?" Lillian cut in. "Nothing's going to happen. It's safe here." She looked me right in the eyes when she said that. And for a moment, I believed her. Later that night, I passed her in the hallway. She was whispering on the phone. Said it was someone from her gardening club. Amber was already in bed, or at least she said she was. Her door was closed, light off. I climbed into that creaky twin bed, stared at the ceiling, and told myself, "They love you. You're just being paranoid." Funny thing about intuition? It doesn't speak loudly. It waits. If I'd listened to what I felt if I'd gotten out of bed, I might have caught them in the act. But I didn't. I stayed. I slept. And I lost everything. I woke to silence. Not the peaceful kind, the hollow kind. The kind that makes you hold your breath without meaning to. The sun was just beginning to press through the blind's thin, cold lines of light across the carpet. The house should have been stirring. My mother always woke before me. Amber usually blasted music before noon. But this morning, nothing. I got up slowly, still groggy from a sleep I didn't trust. No sounds in the kitchen, no coffee brewing, no footsteps, no hum from the old fridge. Just empty air. I patted down the hallway. Amber's door was open. Bed made. Empty. Lillian's door, too neatly folded quilt, no signs of anyone ever sleeping there. I called out, "Mom." No answer. A sharp chill moved through me. The kind your body understands before your brain catches up. I stepped into the office. The bookshelf was already moved, just slightly, as if someone forgot to push it back into place. The safe door stood wide open. There was nothing inside. Not a bill. Not a slip of paper. Just that gray, empty metal box. Like a mouth hanging open after a scream. I didn't react right away. My hands went numb first. Then my throat locked up. I turned around, moved toward the kitchen. That's when I saw it. On the counter, leaning against the chipped coffee maker, was a folded piece of paper, torn from a notebook written in blue pen. I knew my mother's handwriting. "Thanks for your money. Now we can finally live our dream life." Mom and Amber. That was it. No explanation. No apology. No hint of guilt. Just a declaration. Like they deserved it. I stared at it, read it again, and then again. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I laughed, quiet, dry. A sound I didn't recognize coming out of my own mouth. And then I stood there in that same kitchen where I'd scraped burnt cheese off dishes as a teenager, where I'd once handed my mother my first paycheck in a crumpled envelope and said, "We're gonna be okay." I stood there holding that note and thought, so this is what it looks like when the people you love decide they're done pretending. The guards showed up at 9 a.m. sharp, just like they promised. I met them at the door with the note in hand. Trevor read it. His face didn't move. "You want to call the police?" he asked. I didn't answer right away because I was still trying to figure out what exactly had been stolen. Yes, the money was gone, but it wasn't the money that made my hands shake. It was the silence before it, the ease with which they left. No slammed door, no final fight, not even a lie to soften the blow. Just a note, like I was a loose end, a box they forgot to close. You think you'll get a reason, a moment, a why, but sometimes all you get is gone. The police came that afternoon. 2 officers, one young, distracted, one older, quieter. It was the older one, Detective Sarah Martinez, who stayed behind after her partner left, almost like she knew I wasn't ready to be alone yet. She didn't offer comfort, didn't say she was sorry. She just stood by the sink, reading the note my mother had left, and asked, "Do you want to press charges?" The question felt strange, like asking if I wanted to press charges against a ghost. I said yes, but my voice cracked halfway through the word. It wasn't just the theft, it was the shape of the betrayal. Clean, coordinated, silent. There was no panic in the scene, no chaos, no mess. They had planned this, and they'd been planning it for longer than I wanted to admit. That night, Caleb called. I didn't answer. The last thing I wanted was to hear "I told you so" spoken gently. I sat in the living room, the one my mother used to decorate with fake plants and framed quotes about strength. Now it just felt hollow. Every corner of that house echoed with the lie I'd been telling myself for years. They love you, they just don't know how to show it. But maybe they did know. Maybe this was how. Over the next few days, pieces began to surface. Amber had emptied her bank account 2 weeks earlier. My mom had sold a necklace I gave her 5 Christmases ago, quietly through a pawn shop 3 towns over. The car, leased under a fake name. The tickets first class, Milan. One way. Detective Martinez found it all piece by piece. She never said much, but one night she asked, "Do you think they hated you, or just hated who they weren't?" I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. Still don't. The sale of the house fell through. The buyer pulled out once news broke online. The story hit the blogs, tech founder robbed by family. They got the details wrong, of course. Said I gave the money. Said it was a loan. Said I was naive. But the worst part wasn't the headlines. It was the silence that followed. Lillian and Amber didn't call. Not even to lie. Not even to explain. They vanished like people who'd already said goodbye, just not to my face. I tried going back to work. Couldn't. Every line of code felt pointless. Every task heavy, like I was moving through someone else's life. I started therapy 2 weeks later. I didn't go because I was angry. I went because I didn't know how to grieve people who were still alive. The therapist asked me what I'd lost. I said, $10 million. She waited. Then I said, my mom. Then quieter, my version of her. Because that's what they took. Not just the money. They took my story. The one where I had a mother who deep down was trying her best. The one where my sister would one day figure things out and thank me. And now I wasn't just broke. I was the only one left believing any of it had been real. I thought that was rock bottom. But the part that came next, what I discovered late one night, changed everything again. It was nearly midnight when the knock came. I'd stopped answering the door by then. Stopped answering a lot of things, calls, emails, even my own name some days. But that night, something told me to open it. It was Trevor. The security guy from the bank drop-off. Ex-military. Always looked like he was scanning the room even when he blinked. He didn't say hello. Just stepped inside, shut the door quietly and said, "We need to talk about the money." I stared at him. What about it? He looked at me like I'd just asked what day it was. You don't remember signing the override, the what? He reached into his folder, pulled out a copy of a form signed in my handwriting dated 2 days before the transfer, requesting a high-risk, high-value countermeasure swapping real currency with high-fidelity replicas for temporary storage, triggered automatically if a risk threshold was flagged. Apparently I had authorized it. I blinked. That can't be right. I would have remembered that. You didn't want to remember it, Trevor said. Not unkind, just true. Clients like you, the ones who've been through things before, who trust people because they have to, they build these fallback systems, then forget they exist until they need them. I sat down slowly. You're telling me? I said the words catching. The money they took was fake, he finished. Professionally printed, dummy bills, enough to pass quick inspection, not enough to spend. I didn't speak for a while, didn't smile, didn't cry, just sat there staring past the wall into a memory I didn't know I had me, signing the form in the bank's private office, hands shaking, the advisor gently saying, "Just in case you ever get that feeling like maybe you're being watched too closely." Me nodding saying, "Fine, but I hope I never have to use it." Turns out I didn't use it. My fear did. Trevor slid over one last document. The real money's still with us, secured, waiting for your next move. I looked down at the form again. My name, my signature. I'd protected myself without realizing it, and somehow that felt more painful than the loss, because it meant I had known. Not consciously, not clearly, but deep down, something in me had stopped trusting them long before they ever left. Something in me had been trying to survive what my heart still wanted to call family. Trevor stood. They've tried to use the bills. Italy mostly. They're on camera. We can track them. I nodded slowly. He paused before he left. Most people break when they realize they were wrong. The smart ones break when they realize they were right and just didn't want to be. After he left, I sat in the dark. No lights, no music, no voice to explain what had just happened. Just me. And the terrible comfort of knowing they hadn't stolen $10 million. They had stolen what I wanted to believe about them, and I had let them. I thought that was the ending, but I hadn't faced them yet, and when I did, they weren't ready. The restaurant sat on a quiet corner in Milan. Warm light spilled onto the sidewalk. Glass windows, white linen, the kind of place where waiters speak softly and time moves slower. They were already there. Lillian Hart, my mother, sat facing the street. Her gray hair freshly colored curled, a silk scarf knotted just so. Amber beside her laughing too loudly at something on her phone. There were shopping bags at their feet, expensive ones. They looked like two women who had won something. I stood across the street for a while, watching. I expected anger to rise in me, or panic, or grief. But what I felt was simpler than that, a kind of stillness. The same feeling you get when you finally stop waiting for someone to come home. I walked in without hesitation. The maitre d' glanced at me unsure. I nodded. Table for 3. They're expecting me. He didn't question it. I walked slowly to the table. Neither of them looked up right away. Not until I said, "You left the note on the wrong side of the coffee maker." Amber froze mid-laugh. Lillian blinked twice. Her fingers tightened around her wine glass. I sat down across from them, gently placed a black envelope on the table. Inside was one of the fake bills. High fidelity, flawless on camera, worthless in the world. Lillian opened it, stared at it, didn't say a word. Amber broke first. "What is this, some kind of threat?" "No," I said calmly. "Just a receipt. For the story you tried to steal." Lillian's voice was cold. "You followed us." "No," I said. "You tracked yourselves. Every bill had a chip. You made it easy." A pause. A deep, almost reverent silence. Then I added, "The real money was never in that safe. And you were never really that good at hiding." Amber's mouth moved, but no sound came. Lillian leaned back, unreadable. "You going to call the police?" she asked. "Already did," I said. "They just needed location confirmation." Out the window I saw them, 2 plainclothes officers walking slowly toward the door. Lillian closed her eyes for a moment. Not in prayer, in calculation. Amber whispered, "You tricked us." I shook my head. "No. I just didn't stop protecting myself. Not this time." They didn't resist, didn't shout, just sat there as the officers walked in and said both their names. The moment they stood up, I did too. I didn't say goodbye, didn't explain, didn't offer forgiveness. As I turned to leave, Lillian reached out, touched my wrist lightly. "Why did you even come?" I looked at her steady. "Because I needed you to see my face. When you realized you lost something that was real." And then I walked out, into the Milan air, into a world that didn't know me as a daughter anymore. And for the first time in years, that felt like freedom. The money stayed, but something deeper left me that night, and I wouldn't know what it was until I got home. The house was quieter than I remembered, not just silent still, like even the air had stopped moving. I'd left it untouched since the night I flew to Milan. The duffel bags were gone, the note was gone, the safe remained, open, empty, like it had always been waiting to be a symbol. I didn't move back in. I didn't sell it either. I just left it. Let it sit there like a question I no longer needed answered. The money stayed safe, transferred, protected. But something had shifted in me. I bought a small home on the Oregon coast, nothing flashy. 2 bedrooms, wood floors that creaked like memory, a porch that caught the morning sun, a fireplace that didn't need to be fancy to feel warm. I didn't go back to running the company. I handed it over quietly to someone I trusted. Not because I gave up, but because I finally understood that building something didn't mean I had to carry it forever. For the first time in years, I stopped checking my phone every hour, stopped answering questions I didn't owe anyone. I planted herbs in the windowsill. I burned old photos. I kept one. It was a picture of me at age 12, standing in front of a school science fair project with a lopsided smile and scraped knees. No one else in the frame. Just me. I hung it above my desk, not because it was joyful, but because it was honest. I thought closure would feel like a locked door, but it didn't. It felt like walking out the front door without needing to explain why. The last thing I kept was the envelope from Milan, the fake bill inside. Not as a trophy, just as a reminder of how far someone might go if you let them believe you'll never leave, of how easy it is to confuse loyalty with silence. Some days I still wonder what they're telling themselves. If they say I ruined them, if they believe I planned it all from the start, if they miss me. But the truth is, it doesn't matter. I don't need their version anymore. And if anyone ever asks me what I lost, I'll say this: I lost the story I was raised to believe. And in its place, I found something quieter, but real. I didn't come back to be loved. I came back so they couldn't lie about me again. If someone once rewrote your story without asking, just leave a single period. I'll know.